Hi everyone, and welcome to Open Rooms. Tonight we have Home Turf, fans, football, and photography. This talk is inspired by our current exhibition, L, a City Through Its People. The exhibition is about understanding the city of Liverpool through 3 distinct archives that each, in their own way and from unique experiences, tell us the story of Liverpool and its people. This talk will cover themes of collaboration, community, food banks, fans, and activism. And our guests this evening will be able to share much more on these ideas. Tonight we have Emma Case, Jackie McCassie, Ian Byrne, and David Kelly. Emma Case is a photographer specializing in projects that explore home, memory, and place, focusing particularly on nostalgia and the everyday. Emma collects photographs and stories and documents change. She is the daughter of Liverpool legend Jimmy Case and is the founder of the Red Archive. This is a community project collecting and sharing Liverpool fans' personal photos and stories. Jackie McCassie works with female fan-centric publications and initiatives. Her project, Girl Fans, gives female football supporters visibility and a sense of belonging in football culture. Since 2013, she's used photography and the traditional football fanzine as a platform, documenting the diverse fans of the English and Scottish Premier Leagues and the English Football League. David Kelly and Ian Burns are co-founders of Fans Supporting Food Banks, which is a joint initiative between Liverpool Football Club supporters and Everton Football Club supporters to tackle food poverty in Liverpool. Fans Supporting Food Banks has encouraged football fan activism, and since 2015 has provided a quarter of all food donations to North Liverpool food banks. We'll now do 2 short presentations to give you an idea of the projects, and then afterwards we'll have a short discussion and continue our talks on our Discord channel. So Emma, if you're ready, do you want to start sharing your screen?
Yeah, just give me a sec, let's see. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Emma Case and I'm founder of the Red Archive. And the Red Archive is a community arts archive project collecting Liverpool fans' personal photos and their stories. And then we share these photos and stories back with the fan community through exhibitions, books, and events. As Mariama said, my father, Jimmy Case, played for Liverpool from about 1974/5 to 81 when I was born. And the Red Archive started probably about 4 or 5 years ago when my dad wrote an autobiography. And so I started to read that, and it's a bit weird reading your dad talking about trips to Europe and signing on for Liverpool. And I was just really fascinated by not just sort of like the history of my own family, really, but also just the trips that he went on, the experiences that he had at such a young age. But more so, I was really interested in just the journey with the team along with the fans. I was living in Birmingham at the time. And so I'm a photographer. And so the first thing I did was to sort of come up to the games. So I'd come up to Anfield and just really wanted to sort of get a sense of, I guess, my own history. It's a really weird feeling. I grew up in Southampton, and so essentially you could call me a southerner. But weirdly in my heart, I really don't feel like it. And so I would come up to Anfield and just sort of take in the energy and the noise and the smells and just the feeling, I guess, and started to document the area around the ground. But what I started to notice was like the change. Even in such a short amount of time, the whole area seemed to be going kind of through this transformation. And I could see the sort of history slowly slipping away. The sort of the new merchandise shop was being built, sort of areas of terrace houses and shop units were sort of disappearing literally before my eyes. And I just had this sudden urge to make sure that I preserved as much as I could through photography. And whilst I was noticing these changes, I was interested in the people, obviously the fans coming to the match, and I just would catch a quick portrait of them before they went in. But then I started chatting to them, and they would tell me the most incredible stories, and I would be sat there with my phone trying to kind of record what they were saying as quick as possible, but there just never was enough time. And so I decided to go to fans' homes. And this is where the project really started to, I guess, form in the same way as it is now. I started to spend hours with fans in their homes, recording their stories, listening to their sort of lifelong support. Their homes are like a shrine to their beloved club. And I think I was most interested in their homegrown support. It wasn't flash, it wasn't how do you say it? It wasn't branded. It was literally grassroots, going to the game when, from the age of 6, trips to Europe on coaches, in big groups together. It just felt like these stories, if we weren't careful, were going to start to disappear. This is Christopher. He's based down in Gloucester. I'm going to see if this plays now. Hang on.
This is 76. He'd retired in 74. The book came out in 76, and I'd read in the book, he said, supporters sometimes come to the house, and I knew where he lived. So on a Saturday morning, when Liverpool were at home, I travelled up from London with a friend on the railway. We stayed at the Adelphi Hotel on the Friday night, and we got the bus out to West Derby on the Saturday morning, and I marched up his drive and rang the bell, very nervously, didn't know what was going to happen. And the door opens, and this recognisable figure is peering down at me from the door, like, what do you want, look? And I said, I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Shankly. I wonder if you'd be kind enough to sign my copy of your book. And what he did was he opened the door wider and beckoned us in.
So these were the stories that I knew that if we weren't careful, we're just going to get lost forever. Now, Christopher has that book with Shankly's autograph in, and this possession is just so precious to him. And I just knew that I needed some way to kind of archive it, to preserve it, but also to share it back with other fans within the community. And this is where really the archive started to sort of take shape. And so I built a bit of a website and just put out on Twitter, if anyone's got any old photos. I was interested in the ones, the ones that are stuck up in your loft in like old photo albums. And I didn't know what I was going to get, but the fans just completely delivered. I was getting emails pretty much daily, just with the most incredible photos, trips to Europe with huge stories attached, Christmas Day in their new kit, these photos as well, not just the stories. These photos, if we're not careful, will go. And so with this collection, I was like, what am I going to do with it? I can share it on a website, but I really wanted to utilize it. I wanted to kind of wring it dry, I guess, is the best way to explain it. And so I'll just show you a couple more. Let's see. Even people were sending me bits of memorabilia as well. So memorabilia was coming in. It kind of felt like a bit of a responsibility to sort of know what to do with all of this. But what I knew is what I wanted to do was give it back to the fans. One of the ways is my father-in-law, it has dementia. And so I was really keen on the sort of power of reminiscing and looking at old photos and retelling old stories. And so in 2019, we did a couple of pilot sessions with Merseycare and a residential home, and just took the images and took the stories and just shared them within the group. And the energy, I don't know if you can hear my little boy and my husband at the moment, but they're yelling in the other room. But the energy in that room, just sharing your first match, sharing your favorite player. We talked about everything from Bovril to biscuits to you know, we had a rendition of You'll Never Walk Alone. You could literally feel the joy in the room of people just being able to share their story, not Liverpool Football Club story, but their fan story, you know, like what they contributed to the club. And I think that's where the power really felt. And I just want, this is where I want it to go now. So this is what we're looking to do next year. Unfortunately, COVID obviously put a bit of a stop to it this year. But we'd love to be able to roll it out. We did do one session where there was half Evertonians. And so I got quite a bit of heckling. And I did say at one point, what, you know, how could we improve on this session? And they said, next time, just bring your dad. So I don't know if that's possible. And then Madrid happened. And so a couple of days before Madrid, I just had this panic. I was like, well, I can't go, but I really want to do something with the fans. And so I put a call out, can anyone get hold of a disposable camera? And we had, I think, 11 fans grab a disposable camera, take it with them to Madrid. I had no idea what was going to come back. And this then, for me, is another way for the fans to engage with the project. So this is them creating the work. The imagery that we got back was amazing, just unbelievable photos on little, you know, $7.99 cameras. And I think all the fans that took cameras over just really enjoyed being a part of something, having something to do while they were there, something creative. And we ended up turning it into an exhibition. And so we held a bit of a launch party at Hotel Tia in Anfield. And what's really nice is it's their work on the fence. It's in like a non-traditional, it's not in a gallery, it's in a pub garden. And it was just really nice to see the conversations, to look at fans' faces, seeing their work up on the fences. And this is another way of adding to the archive. This is sort of, it's present, but it's part of the fan's story. And so this then gave me sort of that fire to go, well, this is what I want to be doing now. I want to be working with fans to create the work. I want to be working with the archive to be able to look at things like reminiscing. And I just want to bring the fans with me on this journey. And so in March, the next thing we did was run a crowdfunder, which COVID kind of interrupted a little bit, but the crowdfunder was for this vintage caravan. And this is hopefully next year going to be turned into a mobile exhibition hub. So we'll be able to sort of tour it across Liverpool, bringing the archive to fans that might not be able to access either the game or access sort of a gallery or an exhibition space. And so we want to take it everywhere. People can come to the caravan, have a brew, see the archive, maybe bring their own photos. We just want this engagement, so we can take it to libraries, we can take it to community centres, you know, just out on the road. I mean, it is the wrong colour at the moment, but we'll get it renovated and turn it red. And this now is the focus for the project, is to get the archive out and to the fans, rather than expecting the fans to always come to us. And then over the summer, OpenEye approached me about putting on an exhibition in the gallery space. Now, this wasn't really going to be the plan for a good couple of years, to be honest. I really feel like I've only just started to scratch the surface in terms of how much we've got in the archive, the range of voices within the archive. And so this, to me, is a taster, I guess, of what we want to build on. But for me, the best thing ever is to watch the fans who are contributing to the archive, seeing their photos or listening to their stories, walking through the gallery and having ownership on it. And I think you literally can't buy that. It's the best feeling in the world. We have memorabilia in the exhibition. We have audio interviews, but everything is from the fans' perspective. This is their story. And just, I'm so proud to be working with the fan community. Here's a little a little taster of what's in there. Peggy, she's 89. She's been going the COP. I think her first match was in the 40s. Her story is incredible, and she's dead proud to be a part of it. And I think that, for me, is the most important thing about this project. I think I'm probably getting near time now.
Yeah,
yeah. Is that right? Okay, so this is the website.
No, I think you've done like a fantastic job and really pulling together lots of those threads around like community and storytelling, but also making it clear that the power or the importance of this is that people are being able to tell their own stories with their own words and their own imagery. So I think that's really perfect. And I think that leads on really nicely into Jackie's project as well. So Jackie, if you're ready, do you want to start screen sharing your presentation?
Let me unmute. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Emma and OpenEye, for asking me to come and talk through the work. I first talked about Girl Fans. I just figured out today it was 2017. Came into the gallery, actually in the space. And at the time, I think I'd put together 2 issues, Liverpool and Everton. And at the moment, I'm kind of on issue 8 or 9, so it's been a busy few years. But yeah, Girl Fans started in 2013. Let me just... in 2013, I had gone to Anfield in 2013 with my friend Alex Hurst, who's a brilliant photographer from Liverpool, and we stood outside the ground, and we just noticed that there were a lot of women and girls going into the game. And when I did some digging around and found some Premier League statistics, the statistics at the time were that 1 in 4 matchgoers in the Premier League were women, which I think if you were going into the game, into any game, and you saw women at the match, it wouldn't be a great big deal. But talking to people who'd never gone to football, I think they still thought of going to the match as kind of a male pursuit. So the idea was really, it was ambitious. We'll just come back for the whole season and we'll photograph all the women going into the game. So we got to quite a few games that season. It was 2013-14. This image, I love this image because I can show this image now. But it was taken just before the Chelsea game in 2014. So that was obviously the season where we almost won the league, and it always crops up all the time, and it's the kind of it's my pinned tweet because we can actually show it now. But yeah, so the idea was to come back that season, go to as many games as possible, photograph the women and girls, have conversations with them. I'm just paying tribute here to Alex, because Alex has almost been like a silent partner for the first 2 zines, because you never hear from her, you never see her. But she took that beautiful image on the left of Olive, who has now sadly passed away. And as Emma said, it felt important to be able to document kind of who was going to the football, but actually document that from a female perspective. And I'll go through some images. I've got quite a few in the presentation. But also I think for Liverpool, to show how diverse their fan base is as well. Strangely enough, Emma's just said she's technically a southerner, so am I. I'm from South Liverpool, which doesn't sound too crazy, but being born in the 80s and never actually going anywhere, sorry, growing up in the 80s and never actually going anywhere, Anfield to me felt like it was, I don't know, 1,000 miles away. We had no family there. We had no reason to go there. So, my parents are from Wavertree and Toxteth, and my dad was never into football. And for me, my history with Liverpool, always feeling like and always being a Liverpool fan, definitely comes from my mum. So late 70s and 80s, obviously, my connection to the team was going to parades So it would have been the only time that I'd seen a footballer close up, because I never ever went to the ground. Just thought I'd add that in. So it's quite interesting to think how North and South Liverpool can feel so separate, not separate, but North Liverpool felt quite far away. Yeah, so documenting all of the people who travel from all over the globe to come and not necessarily watch the game, because sometimes they don't have tickets. They'll just go to the shop and hang around outside and ask for tickets, which is an interesting side story. And then at the end of that particular season, I always wanted to kind of put it into print. And we made a fanzine, which I suppose really is a photo book. But we made it feel like a fanzine in that it was made from newsprint. It was something that you could roll up and put in your pocket. It referenced football in other ways as well. So we put the scores in there, the games in there. There was the table with the final position on the very back page, which was done in pink paper to reference the football pink. And then it was published in 2015 after a bit of a wait, where I'd had a baby and sat with the images for quite a while. And interestingly, it found its own community, even being in print. One of my colleagues very kindly took it off to Offprint, to Tate Modern, and it was picked up there by lots of people, and it was picked up there by the V&A Art Library. So it already kind of found its way around the world. Part of the story here as well, when I sent the first zines out, I sent them out with Don't Buy the Sun stickers and Hillsborough Justice campaign stickers from the shop at Anfield. And I suppose, again, as somebody who's grown up in Liverpool and then gone to work outside the city, I always felt like I had a stigma, and I was stereotyped quite a bit. And so part of this project was me maybe trying to remedy that by sending out these images of very friendly, smiling, warm women who were all matchgoers. This particular piece I submitted, and it was published in Fan Pages, which is like a style publication by Kira Jolliffe and Bay Garnett. Again, images by myself and Alex. And it felt, again, it's actually, you can't really see it on that image, but where it says girlfriends on the right, it actually says the truth underneath it. So I was always trying to get these ideas of like justice, and there's activism, but it's on a quite subtle level, should we say. But that was a very important piece to kind of get out there as well, into a different kind of domain as well, kind of moving into a style. I'm from Liverpool. I've got uncles in one family who are Reds and uncles who are Blues. I've got best friends who are Blues. So 2014-15, Alex and I went out again and we started to document the women of Everton. And there was, at the time, this great billboard, this Umbro billboard, which is born, not manufactured. I know Dave will like that one. And we did the same thing again, same process, going out, talking to women, photographing them, talking about all manner of things, which I think is one of the great sort of things about actually documenting fans of football, is you talk about the game, the manager, the tactics, where they are. It crosses over into kind of what they're wearing. Sometimes you get quite angry women talking about the apparel that's available in the club store. All of those things. That season particularly, there are different takeaways actually. So after the first two publications, I started to think about, rather than one whole female fan community, started to think about actually each set of fans has their own history and their own narrative. They have their favourite places, they have their favourite kits. And so with each zine, I try to uncover that, I guess. And for me, in that year, Everton actually went on to FA Cup semi-final. I went down to Wembley as well. It was, for me, it was how many children there were, particularly little girls who were wearing full kits, and a lot of them were with grandfathers, dads, brothers, mums. And it was just great to see so many small children getting really involved in the game and being fans. And then I was commissioned by Manchester City to then go over to Manchester which was really interesting in itself. You know, a whole different space to walk around when you go to City Square. The Etihad, derided quite a bit as well, I think, by opposing fans, but actually a lot of the women, a lot of Man City women really loved the space. So for instance, the woman on the right, Joy, is a retired art teacher. So you would see her reading a book on a bench in City Square, and then just before kick-off, she'd just kick off, she'd get up on her own and she'd go to her seat inside the ground. But I particularly love, again, what she's wearing. So she's kind of coordinated head to toe in lime green. And again, that was, yeah, we held a pop-up kind of one day, Thursday late at the Whitworth, where a lot of supporters travelled back, these two supporters from Ireland, to come to the event, which was really lovely. And that led me on to thinking, really, there was a kind of a moment where I thought about all of the older women that I'd been talking to and photographing. My partner told me about Rome in '84. He was really young. He went to the game, the European Cup final, and when he left the game, there was a bit of trouble outside, so he hid behind a bush or something outside the ground. And he said when he hid behind that bush, there was a man and a woman, a couple there. And he told me this great story, and I thought, God, I need to find that woman. I want to speak to that woman. And so the fourth issue was a bit of a departure. It was kind of a sister project, which is an ongoing archival project, which featured Liverpool and Everton fans and other women. So you'll see Anne, second from the left there, in what looks like a football shirt and a flat cap, which is quite interesting for the time. But like Emma, talking to these women is a real privilege. I thought it was really essential and appropriate growing up in Liverpool, because I'd grown up in Liverpool listening to the stories of men going to the game and men going on away trips, which were all great and entertaining. And I never considered that women had done it because I didn't know any. But really the catalyst here was Elaine in this image on the right. This great picture of them going to Wembley with their mum in the middle and her sister on the left, and their mum's got that great handbag, which is in all of the photographs of her going to football. Elaine told me the story of, you know, just going to away games and sleeping outside stadiums on the ground, you know, doing exactly the same things essentially as men did. And from that, I started to develop what I call femorabilia, which is, I have to say, I did not think of that word. There's a femorabilia, a brilliant collection, special collection at LJMU and LJMU Library of kind of feminist publications and girls' publications. Each woman that I interviewed, I created a piece of femorabilia for them. So, and I kind of femalized like flags and chants and just lots of different things. So you can see Man City at the top is "We are really here" rather than "We're not really here." And the Liverpool badge there on the left for Anne and Jane was "She's seen things they'll never see," which is reference to the Liverpool flag. Which has been really fun, actually. So much fun in a way that those kind of humble little badges made Vogue Best Women's World Cup 2019 merchandise, which is quite funny. I'm going to skip along. I'm going to go past Burnley. I just want to go to, yeah, for me, I mean, for anybody that takes photographs, particularly of football grounds, knows how hard it is because you're working at weekends and it's quite physical. But meeting these three women from Celtic, this was for issue 6, and Dave and Ian will know, Michaela, Erin and Orla, really gave me a renewed sense and purpose to what I was doing. So they campaigned Celtic, they petitioned Celtic to provide free sanitary products in grounds. And I think they did it in around 6 weeks, got a meeting with Celtic, and that campaign then extended to, I think it's over 100 football clubs now. So another form of activism done in a different way. And I know Dave and Ian met with them at one point. And I think what was really important for me, that solidarity extended to Liverpool. You know, the clubs in Liverpool picked it up really quickly. I think Tranmere, City of Liverpool FC, Everton, Liverpool, AFC Liverpool, picks it up so well. And so if you ever go to a football match now and you go into the female toilets and there are sanitary products, it's because of those 3 young women.
Well, Jackie, I think you pulled together
Yeah.
some amazing
Red card.
a little bit around like
Okay.
connectedness and activism. And I think that leads us on really nicely to Dave and this project. And I was wondering, Dave, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you think like food and community have been brought together by those different fan bases, or
But before I do, I'd like to say how much I enjoyed that. In spite of it being red tinged, it was really enjoyable. I'll offer the end of friendship to both you, Jackie, and Emma. I don't know if you've seen the new 7.5 ton truck.
It's amazing.
Banks have now got. I'm going to challenge you. When fans are allowed to come back into stadiums, to actually put that exhibition on and to display your work. That vehicle's all Wi-Fi enabled. It's got a meeting space in there. You can get people in there. And let's celebrate what you are doing. Let's shout it from the rooftops.
Oh, Dave, that's brilliant. Thank you, love. That's great. Let's do it.
And I think people talk about my fan activism, and my fan activism probably goes back far too long. And this would probably have to last a couple of hours. I've got a number of notable things on my CV that I'm immensely proud of. I was the chairman of Keep Everton in Our City campaign group, what stopped Everton going to Kirby, and to actually take a Premier League football club, the biggest retailer in Europe, and a local authority on, and win them and win the arguments in a public inquiry, tells you the real sense of fan activism. It graphically illustrates who fans are and what they are. And I've always had a heartfelt belief that your average football fan reflects the average society, and the establishment have got quite a lot of disdain for the average fan. We're more often an irritable itch that they can't get shut of. But I think it was the great Jock Stein said football without fans is nothing. And I think that's been really well illustrated over the last 8 months during the pandemic. With regards to the food bank started bizarrely on the back of the Football Supporters Federation launched the 20s Plenty campaign in an attempt to get a price cap put on away tickets, because we were reaching the stage where it wasn't unusual, particularly when you were playing London clubs, to be paying 50 and as much as £60 for a ticket. And I can remember the first meeting we had at the Premier League, where Richard Scudamore was outraged that we had the cheek to come knocking on the door and demand a price cap, and basically said to us that we were getting football on the cheap. And they always have this analogy about it's a premier event, and the Super Bowl, you pay thousands of pounds, so why shouldn't you for a football match? Now, personally, I have no objection to anyone paying £1,000 to go and watch a football match, but football should be affordable for the working class communities where our clubs' roots are entrenched. The irony wasn't lost on it when he then went on to tell us about what a brilliant organisation the Premier League are, and the wonderful charitable work that it does. He didn't actually say it, but he implied it. And you've got to bear in mind that there was 20 fan representatives from across the whole of the country. And he implied that the Premier League and the clubs do all this charitable work, and we should be grateful for that. And fans do very little and put nothing back. And when we were coming back from the meeting, it was Jay McKenna who was with. And when we come back, we had a discussion. We had another meeting a week later with the Premier League. And it was Ian who attended the second meeting with us. One of the most startling things, and it shows you the power of football in this city more than any other city, because the first thing all the other fans from all the other fan groups will always say to us, did you come down on the train together? Yeah, why wouldn't we? That's all right for Scouts to stick together. And I felt this warm glow all over me. I was actually proud of the fact that they acknowledge who we are and what we are. You had a scenario whereby there was Tottenham supporters in that room wouldn't ask an Arsenal supporter a question, and they were using us, if you like, as the go-between. The City and United supporters had absolutely no connection, no relationship, didn't even know each other's names. They were quite contemptuous about them. I think over the years, historically, I think the clubs and the football establishment, whether it be the FA or the Premier League or the Football League, have relied on us being tribal. And they've got away with a lot of what they've got away with keeping us tribal. It's in their best interest that we don't work together collectively. So we were coming back, and it was a Thursday night on the train, and we decided that when we went down in a fortnight's time, we'd be in a position whereby we were saying we were doing something. What that something was going to be, we didn't know. The following day, at the time, me and Ian were working together as well. The following day, we attended a meeting in a community centre in Anfield. And we were going to speak at a meeting. We thought, my God, there's a good turnout here. We must be popular. Because there was a queue out the door. Now, little did we realise at the time, the queue was for the food bank. And I was shocked. At the time, 5 years ago, I knew very little or nothing about food banks. I think terms like food banks, 0-hour contracts, the gig economy, they're all words that we've become familiar with over the last couple of years. But we don't tend to actually think what they mean and the impact that has on our communities. Now, we were obviously having a discussion that you've got these two mega big businesses with £1 billion turnover right in the heart of the working class northern Liverpool, and none of the money ripples down into the community. And one of the unique things about all of that was that the Bolton constituency in Liverpool, 6 of the 8 wards are among the most socially and economically deprived in the country. So after seeing that queue outside the food bank, the chairman of the community association took us into the stock room because the food bank was about to run out of food. And when we went into their stock room, all they had left was a bag of pasta and 10 small tins of tuna, which they were starting to split the pasta up to make sure that everyone had something to eat, that no one was going to go away empty-handed. That was on the Friday. The following morning, thanks to Rupert Murdoch and the wonderful Sky organisation, Everton were playing Man United at 11:30. So we grasped the nettle and we decided we'd do a food bank collection outside Goodison in a wheelie bin, because that was the only thing we could get hold of at such short notice. And we were immensely proud of the fact that we collect lots of chip papers and beer bottles and a small amount of food. and went to the match and watched Everton do what they normally do. We rolled over and we got a tonkin off United. But I went home that night quite content that was a worthwhile exercise, that, because there might be one kid goes to bed tonight who isn't hungry, who went to bed last night hungry. So we replicated that the following week at Anfield. And initially it was quite difficult at Anfield, and we probably enjoyed more success at Goodison initially. Obviously, you will all know when I tell you the reason why that was. Going the match is a routine. I know you mentioned it, both of you mentioned it in your presentation. It's about the routine. We were trying to instill into match-going fans that their routine is at scarf, badge, flag, banner, season ticket, to the beans. Get it in your routine. And fast forward that on 5 years, you could probably look at your watch and say, Emma Case will be here within the next 5 minutes, because that's when she comes. Jackie, she'll be here after 3. She's always late there. And it worked. Now, the problem we had at Anfield at the time is the new main stands was getting built. So we were getting moved. We were in a different pitch every week. So we couldn't instill that routine into fans. The other ironic thing is, and it's always been really important to us, is it solidarity or is it charity? Now, there's lots of people on the left that say it's charity and you're letting the government off the hook by doing what you're doing. Well, I couldn't disagree anymore. And as a Kirby lad, I say with a great deal of sense and pride and satisfaction, during the miners' strike in the 80s, the most successful miners' support group in the whole country was in Kirby. And we used to go out collecting food to stop Thatcher starving the miners back to work. Fast forward it on 10 years, and you had the Liverpool Docks dispute, and we went out and done the same sort of thing. And that's what happens in this city in times of adversity. When there's a problem, the people of this city stick together and they get stuck in and they have a go. One of the other things that we were extremely conscious of is that we didn't, and we had massive concerns about the rise of the right wing and Tommy Robinson and racism. And we quite deliberately went out of our way to do as much as we could with minority groups. And I remember walking up the path at the Observatory Mosque in Liverpool. Now, you've got to bear in mind, the world was a totally different place 5 years ago before Mo Salah signed for Liverpool. Much to my shame, I'd never been in a mosque before, but we went there. We offered the hand of friendship. I'm sick of going in the mosque now, and I always get asked the same question: can you get me a ticket for the match? And that tells you how powerful football is as a vehicle for change, for the vehicle to get a political message across, that you can get into diverse communities if the message is right and what you're doing is right. I'm proud of the fact that the 4 main mosques in Liverpool all regularly collect. And that's whether it's, to be honest with you, our whole campaign has been run on the hashtag Hunger Doesn't Wear Club colours. And we've always embellished it by saying that it doesn't have a race or a religion or a gender either. And that's why we've deliberately gone out and done that. Now, you've got to bear in mind that at that time, that was more or less coinciding with a lot of Islamophobic stuff going on. I throughout the whole of the lockdown, watching a Liverpool game on the telly, I laugh when the teams come running out and I see the the Sir Kenny Dalglish stand now with a big banner saying unity is strength. That's no coincidence that that says unity is strength. That says unity is strength because the subliminal messaging that we've been given, that we've been getting out of there. And I think the other thing, picking up what you said earlier on, Jackie, about the girls from Celtic, what an absolute credit they are to their club and to their city. What an absolute magnificent job they've done. And I know the first time I spoke to them, I think they were quite uncomfortable about this fat old fella in the 60s talking about period poverty. And it was great. And we managed to convince Everton quite. It's no coincidence. It was probably because we've got a female chief executive that we managed to get them on board as quickly as we did. Liverpool was a bit more difficult to crack. But I think that's exactly what it's about, isn't it? It's about getting into communities. It's about spreading the message. And I don't care whether you're a red or a blue. Don't care whether you're a non-believer and you've got no team. This city is full of good, decent people. It's just that football gives you the vehicle to spread that message, doesn't it? It's about.
That's a really nice point, David, about the idea that you've all in your own ways worked with like very different communities, and you've used photography or activism or the food bank as a way of reaching out to people who are sometimes difficult to reach out to. And I just have a question.
The real funny thing about that was when Everton decided that they were going to, and you'll get these corporate entities making decisions without actually thinking about what they were going to do. And Everton initially wanted to put the sanitary products in a machine, and that the girls would have to go and ask a steward for a token. So we had to explain to them, if you see a young girl having a period for the first time in her life, going and asking a steward for a token for a machine, just put them out, make them freely available, have some trust in your supporters, have some trust in your fan base. But where them girls from Glasgow were absolutely 100% spot on, when Everton launched it, they invited them down corporately, and they rejected the corporate and spent 3 hours with us doing the food bank collection. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, fan power. Yeah.
I was wondering, so going back to the two presentations that we've just looked at, and in terms of like collaborating and working with fans, can both of you talk a little bit about like what did the project allow you to do that you couldn't have done without that collaboration? So what was the role of collaboration? What was the role of community in those projects?
Go first. Now we're being polite.
How did the projects change when you were working on them? Just give us an idea of like the evolution of them.
I think as soon as you start working with the community, then it's not your thing anymore, it's our thing. And so I think for me, I feel it's much bigger once you're working on a project where it's actually the whole community. Now it feels like the archive is more important and the engagement is more important. If this had just been like my own personal little photography project, you know, I could have done a really nice, here's a couple of portraits and this is my work. But I feel like now this is kind of, it's bigger than the art. This is about preserving not just the fan stories, but like every single thing that Dave's talking about. There is something incredibly special about this city. It doesn't matter what color, you know, your shirt is. I don't want to say it feels like a magic, or I don't know what it is, but everybody feels it. And I feel like I just want to try and utilize that and use it and bring people together to then share it collectively. I think it would be unfair to be able to sort of put a project out there that wasn't group led. This is what Liverpool does best. coming, my cat is the size of a everything we do well when we do it together. And so it feels like now, whether you're doing an art project, whether you're doing an archive project, or whether you're doing a sort of social impact, whether it's a food bank, whether it's period poverty, whether it, you know, when we all come together, there is huge power in that. And I've been massively inspired by everything. I mean, what Fans Supporting Food Banks are doing right now is absolutely incredible. And I think that's beautiful too, because it's using football as just like really the like easiest vehicle to make change. And like Dave was saying, it's like, well, we don't really need, I don't know, I'm going off tangent now, but you know, like, we don't really need the government. We're going to do it ourselves. And I think that's the message that I've got consistently from the club and the city, is that, you know, for a long time, I think we've been treated pretty poorly. And so now it's a case of, well, we're just going to get on and do it ourselves. We're going to stick together.
I think as well, Emma, I think one of the most successful things I think we ever did with regards to collaboration, and I'll go on about the mosque again, and people in the Muslim community asking for match tickets. So how do you take football to minority groups? How do you get football out into a community that feels disenfranchised and not fully a part of it? During the World Cup, we done the Russia Egypt game live in the mosque on a big screen, and invited. And to be honest with you, we got 300 tickets. They were match tickets. So we got 300 match tickets printed off with Russia versus Egypt at the Abdullah Quilliam Mosque Stadium, 7:30 kickoff. There was 150 Muslims in attendance and 150 people from in and around the wider community. And it's sad that you've got people living 100 yards away from England's first mosque who've never been in there, who viewed all these Muslim people as a threat to them. One of the most pleasing things about coming out of there was the amount of people, white, British, ordinary, working class people, saying, they're all right then, aren't they? And that's the problem. It's dead easy, isn't it, for us to segregate, be segregated ourselves, to live in our own little tight-knit communities. And that's why it's always been important to us. We often get asked, is Fans Supporting Food Banks, I use a gay group, because we take the pride banner out probably more than any of the others. And we do that deliberately to raise consciousness on LGBT. However, the reason we take it out is it's a colourful banner. It looks good on a photograph when you're bringing people together. I remember going to an Everton away game, and we had to do a match collection at Goodison before we left. We rolled the banner out and he went, is that gay pride banner? So, yeah. Now, we've got to bear in mind, these were predominantly rough lads. They had no problem with it being a pride banner. The only problem they had is they had the Liverpool badge on it. So one of them draped the carrier bag with his food in over the Liverpool badge before he'd get on the banner. And that's why powerful. That's why football's that powerful, isn't it? That's how you can actually move it on. And it genuinely is. It's about educating people. And we've always had that philosophy about educate, agitate and organise.
I think that's a beautiful summary.
Thank you.
And I just have one last question around how do you engage with people with these projects? who don't necessarily have an interest or a knowledge in football? Like, how do you use the idea of football as a medium with communities who don't necessarily know a lot about it? Is that possible?
I think so. We recently run a campaign against pay-per-view television,
Mm,
boycott pay-per-view television, because I think it's an obscenity in a pandemic to charge people £15 to watch the team that you're denying them the opportunity to go and watch. So we set up right across the whole of the country. We set up boycott pay-per-view and donate to your food bank. The first pay-per-view game was Newcastle versus Man United. And I sat in the house that night while that game was on, and they raised £30,000 just on the back of that. The next game that was up was Aston Villa, Leeds versus Aston Villa. They raised £80,000 on the back of that.
yeah, it was massive.
The
Wasn't it?
next game up was the Liverpool-Sheffield United game. We raised £157,000 in less than a week,
It's
getting
incredible.
that message across to the wider community. What's really interesting, that, because it's a good question that I done a presentation to the Premier League on this, and I said to them, you talk about PR disasters, you talk about shooting yourself in the foot, you've just blown your legs off, and forget about the 150,000 that we've just raised. What's more significant is the 8,400 people who donated, who agree with us and oppose what you're saying. And the information, the data is all consumer, isn't it? It's the data that gives you the power. And that picks up on what you just asked then. When you start looking at the data, from Aberdeen down to the south coast, the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, every single country you could name in Europe, and most of the ones you couldn't name. And then when you start looking, because you've actually got these people's emails, so we've got on the database now 8,500 people's emails. Now, lots of them made a £15 donation.
That's incredible.
So they've made this £15 donation, and most of them will hashtag "You'll Never Walk Alone" or hashtag "Nil Status Nisi Optimum." But quite a lot of them put, "I've no interest in football, but I'm a humanitarian." And that tells you that because it's football is the vehicle that self-publicises it for you, you can get that message out. And I've always had this idea that I could probably go knock on the door on any business or any organisation in the city, and the door might just be slightly ajar. But because you mentioned fan support and food banks, and there's an affinity straight away, it's Everton, it's Liverpool. The door's not ajar, the door is opened wide, and you're invited in and you're embraced. And in different circumstances, you'd be asking someone to do something for you who possibly wouldn't, but because people see it as there's a connection towards the football club, they'll do it. They'll do it without even asking the question. And that's how you... where your question really resonates with me, fans supporting food banks. Fans of what? We don't mention football in fans supporting food banks. So is this fans of musicians? Because we do stuff with groups and bands. We've done it with rugby teams. We've done it with cricket teams. If we hadn't been struck down by the pandemic, the GAA in Ireland wants us to go over to Ireland and roll it out in all the GAA.
Yeah.
People with no connection whatsoever with football. And that's how powerful it is. But you talk about the power of football. The 5th anniversary of Fans Supporting Food Banks, ironically enough, Everton played Liverpool.
Oh no.
No, you couldn't make that up, could you? So your 5th anniversary. And that's why Everton and Liverpool both warmed up with Fans Supporting the Food Banks logos on the train and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the New York Reds and the New York Blues had never spoken to each other.
Wow.
They watched the match together on that day. And they raised $6,000 for Fans Supporting Food Banks.
That's brilliant, Dave. And it's the same, like, even for us, like, I think, Jackie, you probably agree with me, like, I think so many of my friends have nothing to do with football, don't, wouldn't watch it, don't know any team, but sharing this sort of stories behind people.
Yeah.
This is all it is. Football is kind of like the umbrella.
Yeah, it's human stories, isn't it? Yeah.
But they're real stories. They're about, families. They're about growing up. They're about relationships with your parents, your first time doing something, your love for something, your kind of coming of age, your first trips on your own. This is all stuff that everyone can relate to. So even coming to the exhibition, if you listen to the stories or you look at the photos, even the archive photos, everyone recognizes a 70s sofa. Everyone recognizes like awful wallpaper. It's
the environment. It's the environment. Even people looking at images and then looking at the ground, looking at the shops around the ground, the cafes. It's the style as well.
Yeah,
there's a fascination. And I think from the beginning, even though I'd done a project which focused on gender, like just focused on women, I mean, equally men were interested in it.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, it's always been kind of split down the middle. There was kind of even a fascination, I'd say, at first, because I'd photographed women, and I don't know if they'd never come across a project where, that had focused specifically on women in football. Like, they knew women went to football, but they'd never seen so many in one space. And so there was a kind of a fascination at first, which is, I think, quite different now when you look at social media, when there are millions of images uploaded, where people upload images of themselves so regularly. But yeah, it's hard to kind of reflect and think back on the start of it, which is only 7 years ago. It's not that long ago, but actually things have changed so much within football culture, within fashion, within football culture, the teams, the way that we watch football matches or don't at the moment, the way it's streamed. It's seen such significant change in the last 7 years. I think for me, some of the venues that the work has been exhibited at has really exposed it to a lot of different audiences, some of whom have not been interested in football at all. But again, I've got friends who are not interested, and they're kind of fascinated as well. And on some level, I think they wish they were more interested to be part of this group and to be able to kind of talk about it so much as well and so freely.
Also, nostalgia, I think, for me, plays a massive part. I think particularly this year, I feel like we're all sort of looking backwards and looking at those times and looking at growing up, and like Jackie said, how things have changed. Technology has changed so much, and so there is a real sort of pull towards sort of, I don't know whether it's old records or that sort of nostalgia feel. And I think that definitely, whether you're into football or not, is something that you're going to be interested in.
Well, thank you all for that. I think that's ending really nicely on a note around like making change and documenting change through activism and photography and kind of being a part of a community.
Can I just make one comment? And I'm not gonna, there's my new book. Transport and food banks, I think it's important that it goes out on something like this.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand outside Anfield or Goodison 3 hours before every game. I want to start going to match again properly and enjoy the normal pre-match routine that most other people's in.
Yeah.
I'm obviously part of that is obviously food bank collections is a stick and plaster for a gaping wound, but there's a long-term objective to what we're doing, and that long-term objective is really gained momentum over the last 6-12 months, particularly since Ian became an MP. Because the reality of it is, people who are suffering from poverty, it's because people made political decisions, and austerity and cuts and benefits and universal credit and the whole platter. Now, we always with the opinion that there's food insecurity because people made political decisions. The greatest respect if 40,000 Evertonians donate once in and 50,000 Liverpoolians donate once in, it's still only a stick and plaster for a gaping. There's a political solution to all of this, and the political solution is we need to get the right to food enshrined in law.
Yeah, we do.
Now, Ian submitted an early day motion to Parliament a couple of weeks ago, and that's managed to get 50 MPs sign that already, and it enjoys cross-party support. We've also posted up a .gov UK petition for the right to food, and we're going to be giving that a massive push over the coming weeks and months. Let's just think about it. If we can get 100,000 signatures on a petition, we can potentially remove 10 million people in this country out of food poverty. So anyone watching or listening or has got a slightest interest, get on our social media and just declare name, address, postcode.
Yes, Dave. Yes. Plug it.
And that's
We'll put everything. We'll put all the details on our social media too. So that's brilliant.
Good. Well, let's end with that call to action then. Everyone knows what to do. And I think some of us will also be on the Discord chat afterwards if anyone wants to continue this conversation. But yes, but thank you to all of you.
How do we get on the Discord?
We'll send you a link.
Thanks, Mariama.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks for the invitation. Take us up on that offer.
Too right, Dave.
Will do.
All right, lovely.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Dave.
Enjoyed that.
It's good.